Frank Underwood starts the entire show by killing a dog and explaining his philosophy of power directly to the audience. And if you've ever watched someone rise through an organization, smoothly, cleanly, with everyone around them feeling good about helping, and only later realized they were the architect of everything that made the rise possible, you've already met a version of what this breakdown covers. 4 mechanics, all of them running simultaneously, all of them in rooms you've been in. 1. How he controls the story everyone else is living inside. 2. How he turns every favor into a future bill. 3. How he engineers the crises he arrives to solve. 4. Why his stillness is never patience, it's timing. Here's what nobody says about Frank Underwood's real power. It's not his political connections. It's not his ruthlessness. It's that he controls what story everyone around him believes they're inside. This is narrative lock. Every person in Frank's orbit is living inside a story Frank authored. Peter Russo believes Frank is his mentor, his protector, the one person in Washington who sees his potential. That story keeps Peter compliant, grateful, and completely blind to the fact that Frank is steering him toward a cliff. The mechanism. Humans don't respond to reality. They respond to the story they believe they're in. If you control the frame, the relationship story, the stakes story, the what this situation means story, you control behavior without ever issuing a single instruction. The 4th wall break is Frank breaking narrative lock with the audience. He trusts us with the real story because we can't interfere. Everyone else only gets the authored version. Think about the most politically skilled person in your organization. They're not the one with the best arguments. They're the one who decides what the situation means before anyone else has framed it. First frame wins. Frank is always first. When someone frames a situation for you, especially warmly, especially with apparent generosity, ask, whose story am I inside right now? What does this framing make invisible? He who tells the story controls what everyone else is trying to do inside it. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Frank's most dangerous move is also his most generous-looking one. Hold that. Frank Underwood never does a favor. He makes an investment. This is debt architecture. The mechanism. Gratitude creates obligation, not legally, psychologically. When someone does something genuinely useful for you, the brain registers a debt, not consciously tracked, but always running. It influences decisions. It creates hesitation before crossing the person. It generates a pull toward reciprocity that the benefactor never had to ask for. Frank constructs this deliberately. He identifies what each person needs: a bill pushed through, a reputation protected, a problem that disappears. And he provides it at cost to himself, visibly. The visibility matters. The sacrifice matters. He's not just solving your problem. He's writing a number in a ledger you didn't know you were signing. Claire runs a parallel system. The Underwood operation is essentially 2 people building a debt network across every layer of Washington simultaneously. Neither of them calls in debts loudly. They don't need to. The debt adjusts behavior quietly, like gravity. Every workplace has someone who does this, who solves problems unprompted, who seems to ask nothing, who is months or years later never crossed. The favors weren't generous. They were structural. Counter. Track favors that come without obvious immediate return. Ask, what might this person need that I'll find difficult to refuse? The debt is being built before you feel it. Every favor Frank does is a future bill he'll present at exactly the right moment. Frank Underwood doesn't wait for opportunities. He manufactures them. This is crisis engine. Most political operators wait for problems to emerge and then position themselves as solutions. Frank skips the waiting. He identifies crises that would benefit him, accelerates their arrival, and ensures he's already positioned as the indispensable solution before anyone has processed what happened. Peter Russo needed to fall, not because Frank hated him. Frank needed a vacancy, a narrative, and a demonstration of his own indispensability to the vice president. Peter's destruction wasn't cruelty. It was construction. The mechanism. In any crisis, the person who appears calmest and most prepared acquires disproportionate authority. If you created the crisis, you are by definition the most prepared. You've been ready since before it started. The room hands you the wheel because you're the only one who seems to know where you're going. This is the pattern behind every person who rises fastest inside institutional chaos. They're not lucky to be in the right place. They engineered the place. The chaos wasn't found. It was scheduled. When a crisis emerges and one person seems remarkably positioned to solve it, ask who benefited from the problem existing. The solution and the cause are sometimes the same person. He didn't arrive to solve the fire. He built the fire. Then he arrived with the water. Frank's most generous-looking move. Here it is. This is patience strike. Most people respond to betrayal immediately, with anger, withdrawal, or visible hurt. All of these responses tell the betrayer exactly what they have and exactly how to manage the damage. Frank gives them nothing. He thanks Walker warmly. He shakes hands. He leaves the room exactly as he entered it. And then he builds the machine that ends Walker's presidency. The mechanism, immediate reaction, is information transfer. You tell your opponent what you value, what you fear, and where your limits are. Frank treats every betrayal as intelligence collected, not a wound to respond to, but data to file and deploy on a timeline of his choosing. His stillness isn't discipline over emotion. It's a choice to weaponize the timing of his response. This is what separates Frank from reactive operators. Reactive people fight the battle in front of them. Frank chooses which battle to fight, when, and on what terrain. The moment of being passed over isn't a loss. It's the starting gun. If someone absorbs a significant setback without visible reaction, they haven't accepted it. They've scheduled their response. Find out what they're building. Frank was never still. He was loading. Here's the part of this video that changes everything that came before it. The four-part system works. Frank reaches the Oval Office, and it means nothing. Here's the structural problem Frank never solves. The system is designed to acquire. It has no mode for having. Every mechanism, the narrative control, the debt building, the crisis manufacturing, the timed strikes, all of them are tools for getting to the next position. None of them are tools for being somewhere. Frank reaches the presidency and immediately begins the same process he used to get there. New debts, new narratives, new crises, new patience. Because the system is the only thing he is. Remove the ambition, and there is no Frank underneath it. Just the machinery, running without a destination. The most strategically sophisticated people you know. Track whether the strategy ever stops. Whether reaching a goal produces anything that looks like satisfaction. Systems built entirely around acquisition have no off switch. They keep running because stopping would require the person to exist without the system. And for some people, that's the more frightening option. He won everything the system could win. He never built anything the system couldn't take back. You've watched Frank from the outside. When did you last audit the stories you're living inside? And who authored them? Think about the person in your professional life who does visible favors without apparent return. Who frames situations before anyone else has had time to think. Who is somehow positioned well every time something goes wrong around them. Who absorbs bad news without reaction. And then, weeks later, everything has shifted in their favor. Run the checklist. Are you inside a story they authored? About the relationship? About the stakes? About what you owe them? That's narrative lock. Ask whose frame you're operating in. Do you feel a pull toward reciprocity with them that you've never examined? That's debt architecture. Track what they've done for you. Track what it might eventually cost. Did a problem emerge recently that they were uniquely positioned to solve? And did they seem, on reflection, unsurprised by it? That's crisis engine. Ask who the problem served before it was solved. Have they absorbed something that should have provoked a reaction and seemed to move on too cleanly? That's patience strike. They haven't moved on. They're loading. The counter is the same as every video in this series. Name what you're seeing. A named mechanism is defensible. An unnamed one is just the environment you think you're in. The most dangerous operator in any room is the one who makes you feel like they're on your side. We started with a dog in a street and a man explaining his philosophy to anyone who would listen. The philosophy had 4 parts. 1. Narrative lock. He authors the story everyone else believes they're inside. First frame wins. He is always first. The 4th wall break is him telling you the real story, because you're the only one who can't interfere. He who tells the story wins. 2. Debt architecture. He doesn't do favors. He makes investments. Gratitude creates obligation that adjusts behavior quietly, like gravity, without a single instruction ever being issued. Every favor is a future bill. 3. Crisis engine. He doesn't wait for opportunities. He manufactures them, accelerates the crises that benefit him, positions himself as the solution before anyone has processed the problem. Create the problem, sell the solution. 4. Patience strike. He never reacts immediately to betrayal or setback. Immediate reaction is information transfer. He files the data and chooses the timing of his response on terrain of his own selection. Stillness is just loading. If someone in your life checks all 4, you're not in a relationship with them. You're in a project they're managing. The defense isn't cynicism, it's clarity. Name the frame before you operate inside it. Track the favors before you feel the debt. Ask who benefits from the crisis before you accept the solution. And when someone absorbs a setback too cleanly, watch what they build next. Frank Underwood is not a fantasy of power. He's a diagnostic of what happens when intelligence and discipline are pointed entirely inward, toward acquisition, toward position, toward the next room, and never once toward something worth protecting. He got everything ambition could get. He never asked what it was for. Gus Fring shows you what a perfect mask looks like over 20 years. Homelander shows you what happens when the mask is built on a wound. Frank shows you what happens when the mask becomes the man. Next, the character who uses all 3 and somehow keeps their humanity intact. Comment ambition below. I read everyone.